Hello, welcome to episode of Fun and Philosophy, basically like a series I do on YouTube where I try to sum up everything I know within 20 minutes about a subject, with some jokes as well. Possibly dick jokes in this one as well, because the subject of today's talk is gender, which kind of makes sense because I did sex and sexuality a while back. So I'm going to talk about gender in terms of how that is perceived, or how that is seen to be in the modern world, I guess, and historically too. So I'll start from a personal perspective. Obviously, I am a cis identified male. Cis, for those of you who, a lot of people probably watching this will be aware of the terminology, but I'll go over it anyway. A cis male is essentially just, or cis female is someone who identifies with their gender, just the gender they were born with. So I was born male and I feel masculine, I feel masculine as a human being. I identify with my gender. Obviously, I have a feminine side as well, but that's a different thing from actually wanting to be female, as it were, which is transgender in the modern terminology. So obviously that's very obvious, and I know anybody who knows about any of these things will be probably yawning at this point. But I'm kind of starting on the soft and very basic level, I suppose. So how? Let's just try and think. How can I take this next? So yeah, you've got there's many a lot of gender. How we understand it to work is there's two main schools of thought on this. There's either, and there's, I think personally it's a lot of mixed both really, but which I think is the rational kind of idea, but there's the idea of like a socially constructed gender, which is that gender is something that you assume and you display, but you're taught those things by society. It's not like a natural thing that you are. It's like, for example, like how you dress, like men wearing jeans and women wearing dresses. That's a socially constructed thing, I think that's certainly socially constructed personally, and it's a very cultural thing. I mean, Greeks used to wear dresses, Greek men, and that was not considered an emasculating thing, whereas probably in some parts of culture that would be considered an emasculating thing these days, I suppose. It's not really, it's just like a robe or a dress, whatever. It's a cultural thing, so that part of it could be very well easily said to be culturally, socially constructed. Sorry, not culturally created. And then there's obviously another one that's flip side to that, which is biological determinism, in terms of your gender just being a result of biological factors and the way your gender expresses itself. Gender is just being your sex, because there's a very important concept within this idea, which is the sex, which is your biological gender expression, I suppose, and then the gender, which is how you your own personal experience of your gender identity, I suppose. So those are slightly different things. I'll go back to the thing about the two social construction and biological determinism, and talk a little bit about what I think. I think essentially we live in an age now where, because of technology, it's easier than ever to for people who want to be, are trans and want to transition into the other sex, to do that. So that has obviously created a kind of culture war online. You'll commonly see with, you've kind of got two cliches of Reddit on the right, Tumblr on the left, and like, I mean, it's like, there's a good meme about it actually, which says like merge degeneracy, meh feelings or something like that, and it just says whoever wins, everybody loses, which is kind of how I feel about the whole situation. It's like there's two extremes to it. So there's like the extreme end, which is everything's socially constructed. So everything's a socially constructed. It's a very cultural, not cultural relativist. Sorry, a relativist term. I wouldn't say it's culturally relativist. It's more of a relative. It's saying that everything's relative to you. Saying everything's socially constructed. So there's no one's naturally male or female, which I think is false. Some people are clearly one way or the other. It's interesting actually tying this into the idea of Asperger's as well, because Asperger's is often seen, and this is, I might get rebuked for some of this stuff, but I don't really care. I'm just, this, like I said, off the cuff, 20-minute, fucking say whatever comes to my head. Asperger's is often seen as a kind of an extreme male brain. Now this can manifest in women, of course. Obviously, women can have Asperger's too, but it's often seen as an extremely extreme version of a male brain, which is in this categorized paradigm is more thing focused, certainly more rigid, logic based. I mean, I think these things should be up for discussion as well as to whether they are actually masculine features or masculine expressions, but I'm just saying this is what's out there that I've picked up from my occasional dipping into this kind of gender theory, kind of gender politics stuff, to be honest. And I'm on the outskirts of it. I'll hold my hands up. I'm on the outskirts of it. I have trans friends. I have people who are trans, who I respect greatly, obviously. But it's all going a bit crazy now, I think, especially with the rise of the Terf phenomenon. So the Terf phenomenon, for those of you who don't know, is basically it stands for trans exclusionary radical feminists. And trans exclusionary radical feminists have, and this is, I'm talking as a bit of an outsider here and only what I've picked up on it, so if I'm making any mistakes, please don't feel like you want to kick me in the bollocks as soon as you hear this. They are essentially, they don't want trans women, so men who've transitioned from men into women, in their spaces, like, so they want safe spaces for women basically, and they don't want trans women in toilets, blah, blah, blah. That's the overarching thing of it. So in some ways it's quite paranoid, I'd say, because the chances of, I mean, if you think about it rationally, how many men are going to want to turn into women so that they can specifically go into toilets so that they can... I kind of don't see the logic of that argument. I think it's rather stupid, frankly. And then there's a recent thing at Pride in Britain where there were some Terfs who, I think it's in Pride London, where some Terfs were at the front of the kind of barged in, I guess, and said that lesbian is its own category. It's kind of, so they were kind of anti-trans, I suppose. This is all kind of contemporary sort of, I don't know, but like, I mean, that was a thing that happened. I mean, it's a fucking minefield, to be honest. Gender. I'll talk a bit more about myself. So, how does my gender express itself? So I kind of feel androgynous more than anything else. I don't really particularly feel strongly masculine or feminine. If I was, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I don't feel I don't feel like I need to assert my masculinity all the time, but at the same time, I'm not like a like a wilting flower or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm comfortable with the masculine aspects of my personality, which are I tend to be quite direct. I tend to be quite blunt in some sort of respects, and I'm using the category of masculine traditional. I know, but just bear with me. I tend to be quite analytical, if that's a masculine trait. In terms of femininity, I'm quite sensitive, certainly. Not outwardly, but definitely internally I am. Which is kind of a weird one. So, tying this in with Myers-Briggs, I'm INTP, which is a strange subtype of Myers-Briggs typology. Myers-Briggs typology is just like personality definition thing developed by Myers-Briggs. It's kind of bullshit, but interesting. I mean, it's like kind of about how it's just like basically functions of introversion, extroversion, thinking, feeling, sensing. Read up on it if you want, Google it if you want. But fuck, I just completely forgot what I was talking about then. Okay, so yeah, masculinity and femininity and how it expresses itself in me personally, and then I'll kind of like broaden out a bit, I suppose. So obviously there are certain biological factors. I mean, this is quite contemporary as well because of the rise in the intellectual dark web, as it's called, of Jordan Peterson, who's he's associated with the alt-right. He's not really alt-right, I don't think. He's more of the kind of... He's trying to reassert an older view of gender, I think, in a lot of ways. So I'm not really particularly a fan of him. I've watched some of his content. I went through a period of a month of actually watching quite a lot of his content, actually, just to try to absorb, what is this guy talking about? But he's often tied in with the alt-right, but he's not really. He's kind of more like a kind of right-leaning liberal, I suppose. But that's all bollocks. It's all by the by because it's not just irrelevant. So he... Oh, God, that fucking ice cream truck. Sorry, it's a horrible noise. It's just like jams my head in. Oh. Anyway, shut the fuck up, please. I haven't got any money for an ice cream. Anyway, by the way, I've completely lost what I was talking about now. Fucking noise outside. Oh, it's horrible. It's like something like a horror film. Sorry, I just got off track a bit there. Okay, so Jordan Peterson. He's, in a lot of ways, it seems is trying to reassert a lot of kind of traditional values, essentially, around lots of things, gender, around... he talks about neo-Marxism a lot, which is, to be honest, is a kind of the worst thing that he does, I think, to be honest. But, anyway, what was I? Fuck, I've really lost my way now. I've got another six minutes to talk. Okay, so Peterson. A lot of his ideas deal with, again, like I was saying before, like I was talking in a kind of categorized way, which is the traditional biological determinist view, I guess, of the generally speaking brain structures in men and women differ somewhat, neurologically speaking, which has an effect on, which has the affect of women in general, so not all women being more drawn to caring professions. I know I'm regurgitating Jordan Peterson, but I'm just going for the argument. And men being more drawn to things. Which, going back to the Asperger's thing, is again, that's what I was talking about, the extreme male brain. I'm not a psychologist, so I've not really read up that much on this. This is just based on watching a lot of videos and reading up a bit on it, really. Like ages ago. I mean, my specialisation within mental health is more within mood disorders, because I've got a mood disorder, and personally also I just find extreme psych quite interesting. So like, you know, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, all those kind of things. But yeah, so where could I go next? I guess where's the video going to go next? Well, I think really all the categories have been smashed. I think in a lot of respects. I think sometimes it can get a bit ridiculous. There is a meme floating around somewhere of like a 76 genders, which is gender expressions, which is frankly absurd. They can't be. I mean, I just can't imagine how there can be that many configurations of how a gender expresses itself. Because the way I see it is, anyway, generally there's three categories. So and this is common sense shit, and anybody who's watching this is just gonna go, who knows about this stuff? Who's like LGBTQ or whatever? Male, female, androgynous, and intersex too, if you want to count that, I suppose. Technically. Those are the three categories of gender that exist. There's not 76 fucking categories, because that's just... pronouns is a big issue within LGBTQ around this issue. It's something I've been learning. I have a gay flatmate who I live with, who has kind of lectured me a bit on this a few times before, and I've kind of got the point of it now, because from having, you know, well, yeah, I mean, from non-binary it's just been more of a harder thing for me to evolve to understanding and accepting, I suppose, but I have accepted it really. So like, for example, in the LGBTQ community, obviously you got pronouns, so he and she, but then there's a third one in the English language now called they, which is just like for non-binary people who just want to be referred to as they. Which takes a little bit of adapting to, because it doesn't feel natural, but kind of once you get used to it, it's why offend someone unnecessarily, you kind of feel, or I feel sometimes. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, okay, fine, whatever. I mean, it's not that I want a quiet life, but I just don't see the reason to, you know, kind of not be kind of polite to somebody, I suppose. I've got 4 minutes, so I want to try and go on for a bit longer. So yeah, like, I'll talk more about personally speaking. I'm not going to name names obviously, because that's just silly, but I've known MTF, which is male to female transsexuals, and FTM transsexuals as well, just through friends and making mates, basically, just as you do, just living somewhere and you just get talking to someone. So that the if for example, like, so for example, with one of my FTM mates, I kind of intuitively picked up that they might be FTM transsexual. I've got a very highly developed intuition, so I can usually pick up, like, just, you know, pick up quite easily what someone's thinking or feeling, I suppose. So he, we just had a chat, and like I just said, oh yeah, you trans, aren't you? Yeah. And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, cool, yeah. It changed nothing, really. It's just, I suppose, in a way, for trans people, they have to come out constantly, I guess, in some respects. Because in a lot of ways, it's the final fig leaf, if you forgive the pathos of that, I suppose. The final fig leaf in a lot of ways. I think, like, with LGBT, like, you know, lesbians and gays have fought and won a lot of rights, and I guess the final rights to be won, human rights and all the rest of it, is for trans people. It's just the Gender Recognition Act, and it is important that trans people can just live their lives like everyone else. If we have human rights, they have to be universally applied, otherwise, by definition, they're not human rights, they're a few people rights. So, time's up. That was male, female, and she-male defined. Sorry, that's a terrible joke.